Hello, everyone. Welcome to this speech. So I think you will be interested in this argument, and you will enjoy this hour with us. So I'll leave the word to the speaker, and if you have any question, he will be the guy that have the answer today. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. How many people here have worked on projects where it's not just an internal project, but there's a product that other people are going to use outside of your company? Okay. How many people have worked on just internal projects? Okay, a few. How many people had a product manager that you had to work with? Okay. How many people thought that product manager made the right decision every single time? There are no hands. 0 hands. Excellent. So here's a little background. I am a developer. I worked on Turbo Gears. I did a bunch of web development for a bunch of different products. I ended up at SourceForge. I was a developer there. I helped rewrite a bunch of things. And then there was all of our product management team got laid off at the same time, and there was a bunch of job openings. And I was like, you know what really isn't working? Product management. I should probably help with that, because then maybe we would spend less time building stupid stuff that nobody wants. So I became product manager for a while. Then I became director of engineering. I did this and that and the other. But so I have feet in both product management and development worlds. So this talk really is going to be about those. Feel free, if there are any questions at any time, to let me know. The first thing that I will say about improving product management or doing experimental product development is that if you have tests, then you are making progress. How many people here developed before they wrote on big code bases with no tests, before test-driven development? Was that awesome? No. And that is where product management is today. Most people are like, hey, people will want X, and so they give them X. They don't test anything. They don't know whether this idea is good or bad. They got no idea. So if we wanted to make product development more scientific, what would we do? So how does science work? Anybody want to tell me how science works? This guy over here is going to tell us how science works.
You try it, you check it, and then you see if it works or not.
Right. You check, you come up with so I'll give you a slightly more detailed. You ask a question. You do some background research, you figure out, is this a stupid question? Has it already been answered? You construct some sort of hypothesis. You figure out a way to test your hypothesis by doing some sort of experiment. You analyze your data, and you're like, hey, you draw a conclusion, my hypothesis was correct or incorrect. You report your results. This is kind of an oversimplification. We're going to get into why this is crazy and nobody actually does this, hopefully at the end of this talk. But this is a basic mechanism of science, right? You ask a question, and product managers do this all the time. They're like, would people buy X? And then they do, background research is what they actually know how to do. They write market requirement documents and product requirement documents and all kinds of documents. And then they think that they're done. They skip this whole part. They're like, I did some research. We're good. And then they might come down to here and report your results. Be like, yes, everyone loves the iPad. Or no one loves the iPad. So if you have a contest between people doing a bunch of market research and people just spewing total bullshit, who wins? Anybody got another question? The answer is everybody loses both times. It's a bad idea. let's not do that. So, like, for instance, SourceForge, when I first started at SourceForge, we redesigned the project summary page to look like this. And it was nicer than what was before. It had this big green button. People could figure out what file to download. People liked it. But we didn't actually, like, I did the engineering work. We made this page. It worked. We changed it again to something completely different. The product manager at the time was like, hey, this is better. We were like, okay. And then after I became product manager, we redesigned it to look like this. Now, this I can tell you is better. Now, how do I know that this is better than this and then the one that came before it? Because I did tests. So this, more people find the download that they're looking for on this page. They see the screenshots, like they understand. So we did tests. We did usability tests. There's a website called userresearch.com. You just give people a URL and you tell them to run through a script, and they talk about what they're seeing and thinking as they do it. This is a very low-cost test. I mean, you have to have the page written, but you only have to make one page. You don't have to make your whole site do that. And you just have a couple of people go through it over an evening, and then you watch the video. And almost always, when you look at a usability test like that, you'll find some interesting results. Actually, like, I've trimmed this. There are some ads over here. And also over here. But in SourceForge, you have this page. And when we did this redesign first, we actually put the download button way over next to the ads at the top. In the same place that the Amazon, like, one-click buy this thing is. Because we figured people know how Amazon works. Like, if we put it in the same place as Amazon, people will probably figure out where to click it. But there were ads next to it, and then it's this green button, and they looked at it, and they thought it was an ad. Like, nobody could see it. So the test results, when we first launched this, were way worse than the preceding page. So we did a user test where we had some users walk through it, and then immediately it was obvious why the click-through rate went down. So we fixed it. We did another redesign. We tested this. So we know that this one is better. Not because some designer says so or because some product manager says so, but because the data says so. So what kind of things can we test if we want to make better products? And this is totally taken from a slideshow called Metrics for Pirates. I totally ripped this guy's thing off. And it's got a nice acronym. Can everyone say this acronym? ARR! So now you know. You can just, if you remember ARR, you can remember acquisition, activation, retention, and referral. And if you get these things right, if all of these things are working, your product will continue to get new users, they will stay on your site, they will refer other people, and you will get revenue, which sounds good. So if you have an existing product, let's talk through these things. Let's talk about activation. So you have a whole, it should be acquisition first. Yeah, this just says activation, but it is acquisition. So you have these whole bunch of channels: search engine marketing, SEO, product relations, campaigns and contests, and affiliate links on other people's websites, and television, and blogs, and whatever kind of way you get people to notice that your product exists. They come in through some homepage or some landing page that you've designed for them. Maybe there's a product features page, and like they come in. And you can figure out, if you do some testing and you do some research, what channels are people actually using to get to your website? Which of these things are working? How much money is it costing you for each of these things? What is the cost per visitor for each channel? What channels drive engagement? So what channels have people that show up and then leave? What channels have people that show up and then look at more than one page? And you may want to invest more in channels that have higher engagement, even if there's a higher cost per visitor. You're going to have to look at the other metrics. So this is just a symbol, and you use Google Analytics, and I would have some sample code, that Python code that uses the Google Analytics API to grab stuff out so that you can look at these questions. But I didn't get all of that cleared by my former employer, so those things are not here. But it's easy. Like, the Google API is totally trivial. This is like, you look at the Google API website, you can figure out how to pull data out. You don't even have, for this kind of stuff, you don't even have to pull data out. You can use the Google Analytics. It has charts. You can figure it out from here. But later, you're going to want to take that data and associate it with other data that you have. So it's always nice to be able to pull it out and put it in a database that you own. So then activation. You have to decide what activation means for you. Now, in all of these examples, I am talking about web stuff as though we all do web development and that's the only thing that ever happens. And the only thing that people care about is websites. That might not be true, but I'm going to pretend it's true and make you guys do translation to, something else. If it's not on the web, I don't know what that is. So anyway, another tool that I will recommend here is Google Website Optimizer. Google Website Optimizer basically lets you do 2 different versions of a page and test which one works better. And one trick that would be in the code that I would show you if I could show you code is that you should, in your Google Website Optimizer setup, it's going to put a cookie that says whether you're in a test group and which test group you're in. That information is not available in Google Analytics, but you have custom fields in Google Analytics. So in your GA code, you should copy the test version that you're in into GA's user-defined fields so that you can then sort and segment out just users who are in a certain test to see if they had a different well, for activation, you're going to be able to get the results that you need from GWO directly. But for other things that we're going to talk about later, like retention and whatnot, you're going to want to be able to match up what test group you're in with other data from GA later. Then you can run tests. What is your activation rate per channel? Once you've defined what activation means. Maybe it's sign up, maybe it's just hanging out on the page for a certain amount of time, maybe it's, it depends on your product. And then can you optimize activation? You run lots and lots of A/B tests. You say, hey, and run stupid A/B tests. You say, this could never possibly be better. This looks horrible and ugly. This landing page is stupid. This content, nobody will like it. Try it. What's it going to hurt? You run a few people through it. Turns out you will learn a lot. And then you can also, once you've got some basic understanding of what works and doesn't work for your users, you can look at, for different channels, do different landing pages work better? So for people who are coming in from Twitter, do they care about a different landing page? Maybe they are more likely to read really long amounts of text, or maybe they're less. They're Twitter users, so you might need to get your whole pitch for your product into 140 characters. So once you've got some understanding of the channels that you're using to get users and how you activate those users, then once they're activated, you want to know, are we keeping the users around? Are there things we can do to keep users around? I have one bullet that is actually the most important thing. All this other stuff, it's useful, but if you don't have features that people care about, if they're not coming back because they want to be on your site for some reason, then sending emails when they signed up or when they've been around for 30 days, none of that is going to work unless you have compelling features. The tool that I'm adding here is cohort analysis. And this is not really a tool, it's a technique. And cohort analysis is just a technique of taking all of the users who signed up in a specific period of time or who have access to a specific set of features if you're running two sort of parallel tests at the same time, and comparing them with people who came in earlier or who don't have access to those features. So you take your cohort and you test like these people who have access to, say, your GitHub, and you just released the merge request feature. And you're like, people who have merge requests, do they use the site more often than people who do not have merge requests? Is their retention better than people who don't? This is how you tell, are new features actually mattering to users? Do they stick around? Retention is super, super key to understanding, are the features that you are putting out there making a difference? The next set of analytics stuff to look at is referrals. This is very important because most of your users come from other users liking your site. And there's this term called Net Promoter Score, which just means how likely are you to refer other people to use this site. And it's really just when you ask people, are they likely to refer people? What do they say? Not do they actually refer people. But it's a reasonably good approximation of, do people actually like your site? Like, they're not going to tell their friends about your site if it's awful. They're not going to make themselves look bad by recommending shit. So if you have shit, then this will tell you that you have shit. And this is important because you should probably figure that out and do something else. And then you can also look back to previous things, like what channels of people who came in are more likely to create referrers. Like, do people who came in from SEO refer my product more often than people who came in from Twitter? Probably it's the opposite. And so you may find that even though there are less people coming in from Twitter, it is worth investing in the Twitter people because they will then later refer you to their friends on Twitter, and you will get more total new users from a Twitter user than you do from a search engine, a search ad or something. And then can you provide some tools that help referral effectiveness and whatnot? Measure all this stuff. Once you put out the tool, measure. Does it make a difference? Use cohort analysis because you're probably not going to want your site to stay static the whole time. So you put out a new tool and you say, do our referrals from people who came in after I added this tool go up? You got to use cohort analysis because once you add a new feature, like your total retention numbers may not go up or down at all. But if you look at new users from that time period, you will see what's happening, and you will see whether users, those new users who see that feature when they first sign up, are more excited or less excited. Whereas people who've been around forever, they may not change their behavior at all, even when you add new features. And then revenue. Revenue is very specific. Like, what kind of site are you? Do you have ads? Do you ask people to sign up and charge them money? It's very hard to give like a specific set of things to test, but you should be testing with revenue. And you got to have, particularly, like there's some sort of call to action. It might just be ads, but you got to multivariate test, like where do I put the ads on my site to get more click-through? There's trade-offs with things like ads. Like, you want people to do things on your site. Advertisers want you to leave your site and go and buy their shit. So you have to like measure those two things and make the trade-offs and measure what those trade-offs mean. If you can't do that, then you're just making random decisions. So all of that sort of assumes that you have an existing product that you know how to sell and you know will work. So that is not necessarily true. If you come up with a new idea or you're a startup, you might be asking, like, can I sell shoes on the internet? Like, will that work? Will people buy shoes on the internet? Like, this was a real question before Zappos. Like, a lot of people would have told you no. They would never, if you asked people, would you buy shoes on the internet? People will say no. I have to know whether they will fit. Like, seems reasonable. Turns out people buy a lot of shoes on the internet. Who knows? So this is the traditional, okay, so all of that we've gone through is sort of preface to how many people want to start brand new products that are different than what they're doing now, or that don't have lots of users, or a working business model. Okay, so how do you build a great product? Like the traditional way, they call it product management. And the thing you do is you start with a great idea. You're like, you know what is going to be great? Shoes on the internet. Seems crazy. Also, pet food on the internet. Like, people came up with these ideas. They were just like, you take something and you add on the internet. Now you have a great idea. Let's build a solid implementation. And usually, like, they didn't fail here. Like pets.com, they built a site. It worked. You could buy stuff. You could get dog food shipped to you. Nobody bought dog food on the internet. So then they launched. They had a lot of marketing. They had like TV ads. They had oodles of cash, right? Did they win? No. Total fail. Because, well, where did they fail? Like, they got the execution right. They launched. They had really good marketing. Like, they didn't have as an idea that was as great as they thought. So startups are totally different than real companies. This may not seem like a shock, but startups don't have customers. Startups don't have a business plan, or they have a business plan, but they have, okay, they might have a business plan. They don't have a business model that works. They have a made-up thing that they wrote down and handed to some VC guy, and they gave him some money, or they self-funded, or however they did it. And there's like an analogy of this back to science, because I like to go back to science. I read a book a long time ago, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Has anyone else read this book? Okay. Has anyone else heard the phrase paradigm shift? Okay, that phrase comes from this book. It is massively abused by marketing droids for like 30 years. But this book is actually very, very good. And this book is sort of a research into the history of science and what happens when scientific events like the switch from Newtonian understanding of physics to an Einsteinian understanding of physics happen. Like, what happens there? Like, it's not just, hey, I'm going to shift things around a little bit. Suddenly we think about the world entirely differently. Like, gravity is not what it was before. Gravity is a completely different thing, pre-Einstein and post-Einstein. And he calls those things scientific revolutions. And he calls the things that happen in between scientific revolutions normal science. And that is very much like regular companies versus startups. Now, regular companies can do revolutions too. I'm not putting down HP. Or maybe I am, I don't know. Historically, they did better than recently. Anyway, so you have natural science versus revolutions. And revolutions are where you have these big shifts in the way that people think about some specific part of scientific understanding. And then you have, in sort of regular companies, you have optimization of your product, and in startups you have discovery of a new product. You're trying to create a new product, find a business model, get customers, figure out how to market it all at once. Like, you have so many unknowns, and people usually start out by assuming that they know how to sell it, they know who will want it, buy it, they know how much they'll want to buy, And really, the only unknown is, can we build it? This guy, Steve Blank, wrote a book maybe 10 years ago called Customer Development. This book is very, very important in product management thinking these days. And it's called Customer Development, not Product Development. And basically, he advocates that instead of trying to develop products, you should try to develop customers. You should find people who have a problem. You should discover your customers, find some customers who have a problem that they are willing to pay to have solved. When you have found customers, then you build something, and then you're like, hey, give me money to solve. Give me money and your problem will be solved. I have the thing. And then they're like, no. And then you're like, oh, you're not really customers. And now you're back here. And you keep doing this until you find people who will buy something. If you do this before you spend $1 million building something, suddenly you're like, ha, I didn't spend $1 million on pets.com. And Zappos, I had Zappos up here before. Who knows how Zappos got started? Anyone? Okay, there's someone. So I'm telling the story to a couple of people. But the first thing they did was they went to shoe stores and took pictures of shoes. And then they put them on the internet and said, hey, you can buy these shoes. And then when people would click on there and buy the shoes, they would go to the shoe store and they would buy the shoes and then they would ship them to you. They had no warehouse, they had no company. They had some guy who ran around buying shoes whenever people click things on the internet. But guess what? Turns out people will buy shoes on the internet. Pet food, no. Shoes, yes. People are weird. Who knows? So then they're like, all right, now we can build a website. Now we can build this thing up. Because they found customers. They validated that they would buy shoes. And they did it in the cheapest possible way. They didn't do anything crazy. They built the smallest amount of infrastructure they possibly could. A guy running around New York City buying shoes. And they even, the lean startup people even have a phrase for that. They call it concierge product, which is you build a website, and when people click things, somebody actually goes and does the thing. You don't have to actually build the thing that does the thing. You just have a guy who does the thing when people click the button. And it's not a bad idea, because then you know, when that guy is too busy to keep doing it, you know you better automate that thing. There are customers that care. Now automate it. Okay, 17 minutes. I'm going to tell another quick story about, there's another guy, Eric Ries, who wrote a book called The Lean Startup, which is also very useful. I highly recommend this book. And his company, this is the chart that they showed their VCs when they started. And somewhere along here, they launched their product, which was like a 3D chat program. And it turns out, nobody really wanted to use their product, so lines going down. They would spend money to get people to sign up, and then they'd all quit. What they found out is, they started it as 3D chat that was an add-on to your existing chat program. So you'd have AIM or whatever, and it would add on to your existing chat network, but give you 3D capability also. So you'd be able to chat with people who don't have this, and then you'd be able to chat with your friends who have it, but now have a 3D avatar. Turned out, their customers were like, why would I want to do that? That seems stupid. But they were like, if you don't have friends who already use this system, it's worthless. It seems logical. So they built a thing that connected to your existing network. Didn't work at all. And their users like, well, we don't want our friends to know about it. What if it's stupid? And so eventually they're like, all right. And so somewhere around here, they said, all right, we get it. We're going to make a standalone network. And then people were like, but now my friends aren't on it. And they were like, huh? And they're like, but I can make new friends. And so they started making new friends and meeting new people, and 3D chat was better for meeting new people than regular chat. So, like, next thing you know, like, up, and they're totally successful. So they added avatar home pages somewhere in that beginning of that yellow square. They added some more features with 2D and 3D avatars, and like next thing you know, they figured it out. But what did they do differently from here to here versus from there on? And the key thing that they did differently is they started talking to their customers every day, and they started running tests. Like, they started doing that retention testing that I talked about earlier. They started doing that all the time. They did cohort analysis. They figured out, do people who have this new feature use the site more or less? And then they built a successful company. Had they built it all and then launched it and been like, here you go, and not listened to users as they went, like if they built all the features they thought it was going to need, they would have built absolutely the wrong product that nobody wanted. Because it turns out nobody wanted 3D chat integrated into AOL Instant Messenger. So you have a new product. There's 3 big questions that you need to answer if you want to know, is this product going to be successful? Is it desirable? Is it feasible? And is it viable? In terms of who does what, I think of you have design, which I don't mean just visual design, but I mean human interaction design, interaction designers, that whole sort of human-centered design movement. They're figuring out, is this product desirable? Will people want to use this? Will they like it? Will they enjoy it? That is their realm of expertise. Is it feasible? That is us, the engineers. Can we build this thing that you want? And then is it viable? This is the product manager's job, to find something that is desirable, feasible, and you can build a business model around. If you can't eventually make money out of it, then you're putting a lot of resources to get no resources back. So if you can figure out how those things work, then you win. But when you have a startup, you don't know if any of those things are true at the beginning. And so if you think that you can just sort of like try things out and not test and not do lots of tests quickly at low expense, what you're going to end up doing is building something that does not have all 3 of those components. So we've already talked about buying shoes on the internet. I just have this example about pre-stained underwear that is awesome. Oh, it's not in here. Okay, so I don't have the photo, but there's a site, and what they sell is pre-stained underwear. And you're like, who will buy pre-stained underwear? I don't know. But it's got like the front pouch of the underwear is actually like you can hide your passport and whatnot in there, and then it's got a big stain on it. So you throw that in your clothes in your hotel, and nobody's going to like root through that and be like, oh, I'm stealing that money out of that underwear. So it's like a security mechanism. And somebody had this idea, and who knows whether people will buy this or not. I certainly do not have the answer to this question. But you could use all of the, like you can try selling it on Twitter. You can use all of these things, even for tiny little business. And this guy is just like slapping some paint on some underwear. We hope. Yes. I mean, who knows? Zappos, I already told the Zappos story ahead of time. The Eric Ries guy that I mentioned, the lean startup guy, this is a diagram from him, but you have an idea, you build something, you write some code, you measure it, you get some data, you learn, and the tighter you can make this loop, the shorter the time between when you have an idea and you learn whether it's a good idea or not. If you can do that all in one day, then you have not wasted very much time on your bad idea. If you take a year to do this, say you got $1 million in VC funding. If you take a year and you have 10 employees, it's all gone. Like, you got one shot. You better be right the first time. If you can do it in a day, you got like 365 shots, depending on whether you let people take the weekend off. And then you could ask the question, is it feasible? And what I recommend if you're a startup is ask the hardest question first. Facebook did not ask, can we make money selling ads on the internet? That was not the first question they asked. They said, can we get literally 1 billion people to sign up for our thing? That just anyway, I'm not going to say bad things about Facebook either. I'm tempted to. Anyway. But they didn't test, can we make money selling ads on the internet? Because that is a known quantity. Yes, people make money selling ads on the internet. Facebook can probably do it too. The question is, can we make a product that is viral, that people recommend to their friends, that gets everyone to sign up, that collects information from all these users so that we have this incredible network of information about all of these people so that we can target ads to them really well? That was the hard question. The easy question is, will advertisers buy ads if we have all this? So they started with the hard question, and then they solved the easy question later. And I would recommend doing that same thing. If you have a cure for cancer, you probably do not need to be spending a lot of time testing the desirability side of things. Most people who have cancer will pay money if you have a cure for cancer. So don't worry about that part. Just worry about a cure for cancer, because then you win, right? Or if you had a battery that could run a car for 1,000 miles and weighed like a pound, nobody's going to be like, oh, no, we don't want to buy that. Or if you had cold fusion reactors and could power the whole world on some water, people will buy this stuff. You don't have to, come up with a big test of desirability or feasibility, or is there a business model that we can come up with? Or if you had an AIDS vaccine, these things don't matter. These things matter. Do these things. Figure it out. And then you don't have to worry about the other part. But if you're, making a new photo sharing site on the web, you better be paying attention to viability. And feasibility. Feasibility is easy. So don't test feasibility, test viability. Or say you're SourceForge.net, you've lost money for 9 years in a row. 1 quarter you made money in 9 years. You should probably be testing, can I make a viable product? Can I make a business model that works? And over the last 2 years, they did. They figured out a way to balance the needs of developers and users and downloaders and advertisers and be profitable. And they did it by doing experiments. Lots and lots of experiments. What if we do this? What if we do that? There's other people who may be still searching for a business model. I won't name names. Oh, and I did in fact have these. It's awesome.
That means the rest of your underpants have to be white. Otherwise it sticks out.
Well, I don't know. So, what is the hardest problem if you're trying to sell this? Maybe you need to sell it in multiple colors. Maybe you need... There are tests you can run. So one last thing I will show is this big slide that has a lot of information on it. Basically, you can sit here in the middle of the slide. The stuff that happens before you get to the middle, that is stuff you should do before you scale up your business. The stuff that happens the other side, that is stuff you do after you have found what they call product market fit. Product market fit means you have people, they want to buy the thing that you made. It's not rocket science, but it's harder than you think. Most people, most companies, most startups fail not because they fail to build something useful, but they fail to build something that anyone wants. Like the thing they built works, it just doesn't do anything anyone cares about. So once you get something that people care about, then you have to scale up execution, you have to scale the organization, the sales organization, and there's a bunch of things to do, and that's a lot of hard work on that side of that. But this is all about learning. This is all about doing. This is all about figuring out what will work, running experiments as fast as you can so that you can figure it out. And there's this thing called a pivot, which is you came up with an idea, and maybe it was this idea, and you're like, hey, I'm going to make $1 million selling stained underwear. And then it turns out nobody really wants them because they're white, and their underwear aren't actually white, and so now it stands out. So now you're like, okay, what do we do? There's two things you can do. You can try harder to sell the original thing. You can adjust it in little ways. You may be like, well, I'm going to offer it in a lot of different colors because clearly that was the reason people didn't want stained underwear. And you can do that. Or you can be like, hey, people don't want this in their suitcase because their spouse/girlfriend, whoever, sees it and then that's it. Like, that relationship's over. And sure, nobody found my passport, but like, so in that case, you need to do what's called a pivot. A pivot is not just a minor adjustment in the plan. A pivot is what we would call in the structure of scientific revolutions term, a paradigm shift. And it is, hey, maybe I should stop trying to sell stained underwear and I should come up with something else. Like maybe some other like innocuous looking thing that could sit in someone's suitcase and nobody will search through. Maybe I'm relying on people's fear of poop too much. Or maybe not enough. Maybe you need real poop. I don't know. Who knows how these things work? Maybe people should just travel with a dog and stick their passport on it anyway. So, with that, any questions?
Question, yeah.
Well, thank you for this awesome presentation. I have a question regarding the circle. You said that it would be good if the time about the duration of this cycle is small.
Okay. Yeah, it would be good if the cycle is small.
Do you have some tips how to keep this circle small, or how can I do it in one day and not in 1 year?
Okay, so here are tips to keep it small. It depends what you're trying to do. But like I talked about the Zappos example, like if they tried to actually have an inventory of shoes and like make this all work, then it would have taken a long time. But they just went out and took pictures of shoes that they could buy at other stores. Or say you're SourceForge, you spend a week and you're like, I'm going to fix one project page. Like say you pick VLC. Because VLC has a lot of traffic, they're a big project for us. And you say, hey, what if we added this feature to their project summary page? Would more people download it or less people? Then you don't even have to like code up something. Like all you do is you have a designer write some static HTML for that page the way it would look with the new feature, and then you display that page. And then you run a test. You don't do any of the back-end coding work. You don't do anything except the minimum amount of work you need to run the test to get the data that you need.
So kind of if you plan to implement some page or some apps, you have to make some mockups and walk to your users, to your probably users, and ask them if it's good or not.
So another thing that people do is they will make a landing page for a product that they're going to sell without making the product that they're going to sell. Has the ad, and it's like, buy now. And then you see, do people click the buy now button? If nobody clicks the buy now button, do not build it. And if they do click it, you'd be like, oh, it's not ready yet. Would you like to sign up for our mailing list? And be told when it does exist. And some people will say yes, and other people will be like, oh, those jerks. But at least you know. And you didn't spend your life building something nobody wants. So,
would you be so kind to add some references to books or to if you post your slides on the internet?
I'll post my slides and I'll reference the books. The big books are, there's Lean Startup and The 4 Steps to the Epiphany is the Steve Blank book. Those 2 books are the ones that changed everything. Like lots and lots of people are doing, if you search on Lean Startup, you'll find all kinds of tips for doing this sort of product development.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lyon. Okay. Hi, great talk. I was wondering, we are doing a lot of tests at my company, and we use a lot of funnels to like see how users are doing it in different, like several steps. Can you say something about like different kind of tests and what is like the most valuable for you? Like which test works and don't?
Well, so when you're optimizing things, looking at the funnel and figuring out like at what points in the funnel do people drop out, that gives you lots of good information. When you're trying to test a brand new feature that may not be easily funnelable, like it's git commit browsing on SourceForge, like that sort of thing, what you will want to do is cohort analysis, or like do a A/B test where some users get it and other users don't, and look at the difference. I find when you have enough traffic for it, split testing is the most valuable in terms of giving you a lot of raw data. When the raw data doesn't make any sense to you at all, then you want to move to like individual user testing, like that usertesting.com site I said, or just like go to a coffee shop and make someone use your product and ask them what they're thinking while they're doing it. The book I would recommend there is It's Not Rocket Surgery by Steve Kung. It's like a 100-page book. You can read it on the airplane flight. Get it on Kindle, read it on your airplane home. That will, like, if you do that testing, which takes, like, literally going to a coffee shop and asking someone to use your product for 10 minutes, or look at your web page for 10 minutes, and asking them some questions about what they see and how it works, that one thing will make your website or your product better, faster than anything else you can do. But it doesn't give you aggregate data. It gives you one person's opinion. But usually that one person's opinion gives you like 80% of the total insight that you could get. Like, and then you're doing tests to get all the rest. So that's if you can only do one thing, do that thing, and it's cheap and it's easy. So not doing it is not really excusable.
Hi. One of my previous employers used to always throw this acronym, MVP.
Minimum viable product.
Which basically kind of gives them free rein to say, well, this works, and just go off and build it. What's your opinion? I mean, does this even fit in?
So, minimum viable product is a big buzzword in the lean startup community. And in the lean, in Eric Ries's definition of minimum viable product, it has one meaning, which is it is the minimum amount of the product that you want to build that will answer the question, is it viable? It is not, will this product do everything, will it do what it should, la la la. It is like, say you're trying to sell shoes on the internet. The minimum viable product is a web page that someone can click, and then we will know whether people will buy shoes on the internet. It answers the most pressing question that you have. So you build the smallest amount that you can build to answer the question that you have. So if they don't have a question, they don't have a minimum viable product. Like, they're not doing this in a rigorous scientific way. They're just throwing around buzzwords but still doing it the old way. It's like people they're like, well, we don't do planning, so we're agile. Like, that's not what agile development is. Like, they don't do stand-ups, they don't do anything. all they do is not plan. That's not doing Agile. Saying you're building the minimum viable product doesn't mean you're doing lean startup.
How do I argue that? Like, how do I disprove what he asked for?
Well, you got to figure out, like, try and push it back to the, what question are we trying to answer? What would a viable product look like? And what question are we testing? Like, then you can say, is this an important part of a minimum viable product, or is it outside of the minimum viable product? Until you know what question you're trying to answer, you can't. So if you ask for that question and they can't come up with it, then have a don't tell them they're wrong. Just have a conversation about what that question is, so that you can understand, and then they can understand because they didn't think of it yet either. And then once you've got an understanding, then loop back around to the thing and say, okay, now does this mean that it's part of the minimum viable product? And like try and structure the discussion so it's not adversarial. It would be like just say, hey, like, you know, has anybody seen Columbo? Columbo is my favorite because he just acts stupid, and that's how he solves everything. He's like, could you explain that to me? I do this all the time. Like, being stupid is great. Because then people will explain stuff to you, and then they have to actually figure it out. And so they figure it out for you, and you don't have to do anything except be like, but wait, I'm confused. Could you explain this part? And then they have to, and obviously you could say, that sounds confused. Like, have you really thought this through? You're an idiot. But that would be mean. Whereas if you just say, I'm confused, then, you know.
Yeah.
Hi. What do you think about social pledging or something like Kickstarter to discover your customers? Or something like that.
Kickstarter is a great innovation in the idea of like having a minimum viable product, because you describe your product and then people are like, yes, I would buy that. But they're not just saying they would, there's kind of a commitment. And like that means you have a viable product. Like you build the thing, like, so I'm a huge fan of Kickstarter. Like I think what's interesting about Kickstarter is like the idea, like a friend of mine was pitching like that he was going to create a Kickstarter company where all he would do is help you write your Kickstarter thing, so that you could get funding for your things. And I thought that was crazy. And then I was like, or maybe you need to do a Kickstarter, say, hey, I would start a company to help people write their Kickstarter plans if I got $1,000 of people pledging that they want it. But he didn't write a Kickstarter. But like it's great to get commitments, and before Kickstarter, one of the ways that people would do it is you would go out and you'd say, hey, would you buy this thing if I had it to sell you? And they would say yes. And then you say, would you sign a piece of paper that is not binding in any way that says, yes, I would buy this thing if you would sell it to me for this price? And a lot of times people would say, I would buy it, but they would say, no, I will not sign that piece of paper. And then you know that they kind of maybe would buy it, but not really. But Kickstarter takes that up one more notch, and that is awesome. But sometimes, like if it's a $10,000 or $100,000 like solution for your bank, you're not going to be able to use Kickstarter. You're going to go and try and get people to sign this. I would use it if you built it, which is described in the 4 Steps to the Epiphany. So read that book. Other questions?
Questions? No?
That's perfect because we have 1 minute.
Yeah.
So, excellent timing, everyone. Good job. Great audience.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay, it's okay.